Our modern world has thousands of problems. Now, one doctor offers 4 formulas that rethinks how we do therapy, how we do medication, and how we see the world. Join us if you want to learn the science of human emotions. You're listening to the 4 Blocks Podcast.
Hey, Doc. This morning, scanning the news, I came across the stun shooting in Colorado, and they talked about Alex McKinney. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of this, Doc.
Okay.
So he's transgender, and he's depressed, and he's anxious, and he's angry because of what's taking place, and nobody's understanding him.
No, he's not angry because of what's taking place on the outside. That's what we teach all the time. He's angry because he believes the world should be different than it is, and then he defines the world as a bad place. I remember that. But the world's not good or bad. It doesn't have it in for you. It doesn't applaud you when you do, quote, neat things. If you're the captain of the football team, you may get other attention. And if you find yourself as maybe a transgender, maybe you get less attention and people make fun of you. But I'm concerned, number one, is defining yourself in the first place. You know, outside of being human and male or female, and that can be changed, you don't have to apologize for making the transgender or gay or whatever group you want to identify with, but because others don't agree with you. You know, if I'm on the basketball team and others hate basketball, I don't need to take revenge because they hate basketball. Just don't go to the fucking game, right?
Yeah, but it could be a lot more than that. You know, his parents might be, the home base might not be in agreement with what he's trying to be, you know, the transgender.
Sure.
And he's getting hit on both sides, and the
Right.
parents don't understand why he's being this way, and
But
the suffering just continues.
Yes, the suffering continues because of what you tell yourself about the parents, about the school, and then stop and say, okay, I want you to think about, I want others to suffer because of my choice. Okay. Or because they were nasty to me, I want to kill them. Is there other things? Are there other possibilities that you might think of? And the clearest one that we teach over and over and over again is the Stoics over 2,000 years ago, Epictetus. Control what you have control of. Because there's so many different experiences we got in life. I mean, millions and millions of experiences we're going to experience in life, but only a small part that we have control over. So what we don't have control over, this was the Stoics' advice in Epictetus, let go of what you don't have control over, so you've whittled those experiences down to what you can really do something about. You can't control what somebody else thinks, how somebody else behaves, but you can master what you think and your internal response to your experiences. That you can master, and that would be the goal of anybody that came in, whether you're transgender or, you know, gay or straight or married or not married or whatever it may be. We let control what you have control over, and that's yourself. And of course, you know, if we're guided by wisdom, that leads to compassion and kindness. So when others are nasty to you, you don't have to respond in kind. Now, often we do, and it's perfectly okay to be assertive about our beliefs and ideas. But when we want to take revenge and believe the world is a horrible place and I'm going to kill people that are unkind, to me, is obviously not mastering yourself very well. And we use often as excuses they were abused in the home or people were bad to them and treated them bad. But you have some of the thousands and thousands of examples throughout history where it was phenomenal how people were treated. Martin Luther King, take Nelson Mandela. He stayed in prison for 40 years because of his beliefs, and he converted the guards in prison. But,
Well,
but I mean,
the media doesn't help this out though at all.
Oh,
the
media buys in. I mean, they say, oh, he was abused as a kid. Well, that's a lousy thing.
Well, not only that, let's just say that this morning on TV, they're talking about one of the presidential candidates had something to say about the black folks. And
Right.
Since he said this, now they feel a certain way.
Who feels a certain way?
The black people now, they
Well,
assume that
yeah,
since
yeah.
he said this, that
some of them. And
now they
of course,
feel,
yeah.
they feel like offensive that he shouldn't be saying this. And
You cannot.
you hurt this is what I was looking for.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
hurt their feelings.
Right. Let me put it bluntly, and it'll take a while to see this. It's impossible for you to offend me. Offend me. Call me a name. Make fun of my wife and kids. Go ahead, offend me.
Doc, you're looking pretty shabby here today. Look a little overweight.
Yeah.
Looks like you need a shave.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. I can master my reaction to you. First, maybe I want to listen, take a pause, take a breath, and consider the source. You can't be different. You know the English language. You've got a tongue and a voice box, and you can say the words, which is what you're totally responsible. And my reaction is what I can master. And when I react to that, bing, bing, I'm not really pausing and taking in what you're saying. And no matter what you're saying, or you could say something far worse than that. Call my wife a bitch and a whore, and my kid's a whore. She's raising whores. How can you go with that worthless Colombian bitch?
Can I get their number?
Yeah, see that's what most people want to know right away.
I'll give it to you later,
Yeah.
Stat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, this is what I was looking for, Doc, is
Yeah,
that
you-
they're responsible for their feelings and thoughts, but we're not teaching that. So
they don't teach it in school.
So he couldn't be any different in his thinking than what took place because he didn't have the tools to help him get through this.
Exactly. Not only did he not have the tools, but what he did must have occurred because of all the conditions. Now, the conditions didn't create his behavior. His thinking created the behavior. The conditions were there, and if he had mastered his own, if he'd say, okay, maybe I haven't thought through this very, very clearly, getting guns, and I forget, I saw something where they marked up cars and set some on fire and then went into the school. And no, the schools don't teach this. That's our main thing. That's one of my major complaints, and one of the things that I would hope within my lifetime, it doesn't look like it's going to happen, that we could get this in every school system.
What you're saying, Doc, is that this should have happened. This shooting at STEM school should have happened because all the conditions were there for this to happen.
Not because we like it or find it unpleasant, but if the conditions are here today, it will rain. When the conditions change, it stops raining. And I'm all for changing the conditions, but to go around screaming it mustn't exist when it clearly does exist. Same in his head. If he would say, well, some people act nasty and some don't. Those in my transgender group all treat me well and they welcome me with open arms. I'll hang around those people, and I won't hang around the people that are nasty to me. Well, you don't have to. These over here aren't heroes because we think they're heroes, and these over here are not worthless pieces of shit because we think they are. That's in our mind, and so we change the way we look at the world. You know, it's not important what you look at; it's important what you see. Now, that's an important concept. It's not important what you look at; it's important what you see. Because you can look at all kinds of things. I don't like this. I don't want it that way. I want it this way. I want it that way. Well, it is the way it is. And see clearly how we're disturbing and upsetting ourselves. And now I have an option. That's what the Stoics over 2,000 years ago. It's not just them, but and that's what Albert Ellis saw very clearly. It's not what happens to you, but your view of what happens to you.
So just if you would have just learned the 3 insights, just that alone, that these outside events don't cause your feelings and thoughts.
And you truly incorporated that. Just saying it doesn't.
Of course.
Saying it is knowledge. Wisdom is incorporating it and living it down to the cells in your skin. So if he really knew that and really practiced it, then he would take a breath. When people were nasty and made fun of him, he would say in his head something like, "This moment can't be different, and they are exactly who they should be." And it could even go the other way. You could have, instead of revenge, you could have compassion, because they're disturbing themselves. When they're acting in that manner, they're the ones that's suffering. You don't have to suffer. They're already suffering. You don't have to go get a gun and kill them and shoot them. And they're already suffering because that type of thought process is just going to go over and over and over, and it's going to eat away at their own joy in life. They're already suffering. When they're making fun of you, they're suffering. A compassionate, caring, loving, a mind at peace, a mind that doesn't struggle would not have those, not only judgments and thoughts, but much less the nastiness. So a mind that doesn't struggle. You accept it. Whatever they're doing doesn't change your internal reaction and response. That we do not teach in school, and therefore we don't have it in life, and we suffer because of it.
When people are different and you're in school, kids are going to make fun of you. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, and
I can remember myself being an ignorant bully at one time, making fun of kids that were different.
right.
Because it was the thing to do. Other kids were doing it, and I didn't have the compassion or the knowledge of what I have right now.
But you learn how to have compassion.
Yes.
You don't go around making fun and being the big bully. I mean, you're big enough, you could bully small folks like me all the time. I don't remember that being part of your agenda, and haven't noticed that. So obviously, how did you change?
By having the tools of the 4 blocks, it's changed my demeanor, changed my thinking, the way I look at things now.
Which would have changed all the school shooters in the world, not just this country, would change, because they look at their own mind. Their mind drives the behavior. The other people don't drive the behavior, because you could
Yeah,
do
2 people
totally
could get bullied by the exact same bully. They're not both
Sure.
going to become school shooters about it.
Exactly.
So what's the difference?
And who isn't bullied sometime in their life in school? We don't all turn into school shooters or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing to do. I wish that people would take responsibility, mind their own business, and, recognize when they're bullying others that they're suffering. And you really wouldn't want to. I mean, if kids really are different, they look different, they have, different sexual identifications and beliefs, you're going to make fun of them. You're a car man. I could have a belief that Fords are better than Chevrys, but I don't have to attack you because I'm going to go kill a bunch of Chevrolet owners, right? So, I mean,
Well, you could.
you could, but But again, these are the kind of things, I want them to suffer. That's what I heard over the news. I want them to suffer. They're already suffering. You don't have to pour water on a drowning person. So they're already suffering. You don't have to do that. But now you've changed your entire life. So you're going to be trans, and you think going to jail, they're going to make less fun of you? I mean, what do you think is going to happen there?
It's going to be really brutal.
Yes, and unfortunately, but you're not setting yourself up for, contentment. You're going to be putting yourself in an environment with a probability that the school was a cakewalk compared to where you're going.
Well, school is temporary too. There's a lot of believing that there's this permanent label that everything's bad and the world is bad that makes them act out. If they had realized that it's just temporary, it's not going to be this way forever.
It comes and goes.
But I think
everything else, yeah.
Yeah, I think the main point though is that the conditions that are most responsible for this taking place is the lack of mental health in schools, where nobody's taught how to manage stress. Nobody's taught empathy or how to have a thicker skin or how to be compassionate, like you said. So that's the main condition that we don't have control over, but maybe we could influence it, because that is the most important part here.
I would hope. My mentor, Albert Ellis, one of my mentors, and the other Steve Hagen, but Albert Ellis in his lifetime wrote more than 75 books and over 6,000 articles in journals and professionally. He gave talks all over the world, was very famous. And what have we done? We haven't done. Give me one. You know what schools are doing now, which I'm very thankful of? They're doing mindfulness. Well, that's great. I'm all for that. I wish that would have happened. Well, if we would apply with the mindfulness, wisdom, reason, rational theory, teaching. Here, look, this is not complicated. Here are the 7 irrational beliefs that causes all disturbance on the planet. 7 is not difficult.
No.
How difficult is it? It's compared to calculus. It's nothing. So you can
give it to us, Doc.
Well, the 7 irrational beliefs that causes all our suffering. Number 1 is it upsets me. Starting with the fellow you're talking about.
These students upset me because they treat me this way.
This over here. So there's 8 different ways of it. And you just teach the thing. It's he, she, it, they, them, those, that. You upset me. It's never true, never true, never true. But we get indoctrinated in that at a very, very, very young. It's not nice.
Victim mindset.
It's not nice.
It's because it appears that it is until you get this new way of thinking. It can't be. You can't think any different.
It looks like cause and effect, but there's missing steps that people don't know about.
Exactly, and it does appear that way. It seems that way, but it isn't that way, because you can't master how somebody else acts. Not for a moment, not an instant, but you can internally stop upsetting yourself. Or when you do upset yourself, you go to your own mind, and then you can get over it quickly. And you don't hold grudges or revenges, because people are just like you.
Well, they said that in this Alex, he was only planning this for weeks. I have to say that I don't believe this was just weeks. I think this was being brought on for a long time. You just don't get fired from a job in a week or two. This behavior and these actions have to be. These
thoughts have been going on since we've learned how to speak, and learn how to think. Because as infants, we're just like a blank slate, a tabula rasa, the Greeks used to say. And then our 60,000 sentences as we began to speak, maybe within the first year, that's what writes on that tablet. That's who you're going to be. Your experiences can influence, but the greatest influence is our dialogue in our head. And we can learn that even through difficult and what we would call bad, which I don't like to use, but the difficult experiences, which we will all have. We all have acceptance and rejection.
So for years, he's being treated differently in school. So he's got this brain pattern going on, these 60,000 sentences every day. And
which is the cause.
And the 40 or 50,000 of them are thinking that
they need to suffer. I'm going to kill them.
I'm useless. I'm no good.
I'm worthless. I'm going to teach them that need to suffer. Yeah, you do that all day long. You're not, number one, that drives the behavior. And where does the behavior drive? You go down to the local gun store, or I heard they took an axe to their family's gun case and got the gun, and they got the ammunition.
We need to ban all axes
and
crowbars.
I'm just kidding.
and gun boxes, and then that drives the behavior. See, if I keep the thoughts drive the sensations, the feelings, and the behavior, and they don't happen 1, 2, 3 as the news media likes to do. What it had in the Buddhist philosophy, they call it dependent co-arising. All these conditions are dependent and they co-arise at the same time. So the thoughts, the feelings, and the behavior are in a cognitive behavioral loop, and they happen at once. So you have the thoughts, you have the feeling, and you go out and you take an axe and get the gun, and then you plan how you're going to go make the others suffer. And you just add it to your suffering. So anyhow, that you wanted to know all of the 7 irrational beliefs. 1 is it upset me. 2 is not only does it upset me, but it's awful and catastrophic and horrible if it doesn't happen the way I would like. Right? If it doesn't happen and I want it, it's horrible and awful. If it does happen and I don't want it, it's also catastrophic. You're trying to control the world.
Well, awfulizing is exaggeration.
Yeah.
You're like immediately looking to see just how bad it is so you can feel even more victimized.
I don't like how they're treating me. It's catastrophic, and the world is a horrible and terrible place. So number one is it upset me. Number 2, it's awful. And number 3, I can't stand it. Not only is it unpleasant, but I can't stand it. Well, take a breath, breathe out, you're standing it. So as long as you do that, you stand it to the millisecond of death. It upset me, it's awful, I can't stand it. And here's the big one, there's never a disturbance without this, number 4. It shouldn't exist because I find it unpleasant. Or it should exist if I find it pleasant and it doesn't exist. So there's always a should, a must, or demand. There's about 17 ways we demand, but that's the key. It shouldn't be, but it can't. This moment, I've said this over and over again, and we'll say it over and over, this moment doesn't have an option. It doesn't have an option. Why? One word. If all the conditions are here at this moment, whether it's a grain of sand on the beach or a neutron explosion of a sun, has to occur at the millisecond it occurs.
That was a lot more than one word.
Because the conditions are there.
Oh, conditions is the one word.
The conditions are there for this moment to exist.
Yeah.
Whether I like it or not. But, okay, so what can I do if I don't like something? Well, first you can master your own mind so that you don't stay disturbed and upset in your life. Or you can be bounced around by randomness in your environment.
I think it's important to note just that the I can't stand it statement and a should statement are both examples of resistance. It's resistance to the way reality is because you think it's awful, and that it's determining the way you feel.
Well, all the 7 is resistance. If you totally accepted this moment, fully relaxed into this moment, you would be living the experience of your life. The moment you have a slight degree or leaning mind, I don't like this. No matter what it is, you're waiting in line at the grocery store, and the little old woman in front of you is looking for her credit card, and you're getting annoyed and aggravated.
Get used to a cupcake.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're resisting this moment as it is. Every moment can be a teaching moment.
Well, I would imagine that Alex is probably saying that nothing is changing in my environment, and since nothing's changing, and he's rating it, that he wants to die because they said he was suicidal.
Yeah, it was
So
suicidal.
since things aren't
I'm gonna
going
I'm gonna
going
take
my way,
Self-rejection.
things aren't going my way, and and I'm feeling awful and terrible, and he's got all these 7 irrational beliefs. He goes, I want to die because I can't stand it anymore.
So he says this to me, and I'd say, "Oh, what's your concept of death? What do you think's going to happen?" I want to know what dying means for him. If he's sitting here talking to me, so what is your concept of death?
Well, that could be any number of things you could
Yeah,
have the
but that's
beliefs
what
on.
I'm saying. I'm waiting for him to. Well, okay.
I'll be at peace. That's probably what he's thinking.
what came to
I'll
my
be-
mind,
I'll
too.
be at peace. I won't have to deal with this anymore.
How do you know? I mean, if half the world's religions, billions of people think if you do things like that, you're going to
Go to hell.
You're going to burn in hell for all eternity. What if they're correct? Well, now you've really fucked.
That's a good point. I've never heard anybody say it like that before, Doc.
Yeah, well,
You know, what happens when you die?
that's right. What is your concept of death? I want to die, okay, and then?
They also didn't manage to pull off the suicide, and now they're going to prison, so they have a real life hell already in front of them.
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to shift gears
Okay.
and talk about Kempter Castell. I hope I got his name right. This is one of the young students there that helped stop these 2 students. Well, I don't remember the other one's name. He got shot in the leg, but Kempter
Was
got
killed.
shot in the
Yeah.
torso and he died. Now, if his parents came in to see you because they were suffering, of course, because his son died, and said, our son's dead because of this
Awful,
transgender,
terrible thing.
and we're feeling, depressed. We want justice for our son. How would you handle this?
First of all, I'd probably cry with him. It's very sensitive, very touching. I could imagine if my daughter was killed, in a situation. I've got 2 daughters, or either one were killed in a situation like this, but of course, I would expect them to have intense feelings of grief and sadness. And by the way, when they come in, they go, "Oh, this is, my son, this is terrible and horrible." I'm listening, okay? I hear all the horrible and terrible, and it shouldn't be this way. And I don't whip out a chart and go, "Oh, yeah, it should be that way. Let me show you why it should. And here's the A, and here's the C, and here's the B." No, shut your mouth and listen, because, there is pain and suffering, okay? And we can take the time, and it will happen, the time necessary, and it will come, they're in the throes of deep emotional turmoil. That's not when you start talking and outlining rational theory, or doing whatever, or even at that moment trying to teach them, compassion and embracing and so on. It might come up about compassion, but anyway, you listen and you listen and you listen, and then you begin teaching slowly when the emotions are coming down. About one of my favorite is a car pulling in front of you on the interstate, and how so many people believe that because of it. But I'm not going to address their deep grief and sadness. I say it's very rational and appropriate to feel deep grief and sadness. And there's a time that you will go through that, and you will go beyond that.
After the elevation of, After you have a couple of sessions with them.
No, it's more than a couple.
It's more than a couple?
Absolutely. Yep.
So the first few sessions, you just be talking.
Well, let's say it's been a year and they're still depressed.
Oh, that's not a year. It won't be a year. I mean, I won't wait that long. But you know, you don't. In school, you teach addition and subtraction. You don't teach trigonometry when they first start out. You work them up to you a little at a time, and that's what you do. But there's not a set time when I think they're understanding, and they may say something in the first session. I remember, you know, I've had that before when people, you know, their mates leave them or whatever they're doing, and they'll say things like, you know, I have compassion for them too. Well, wow, you know, all of a sudden they're saying, out of this intense grief and sadness, that they can see the plight of the other person's suffering and all. So depending on what I'm getting back, I will begin slowly teaching basic math.
What's one of the first things that you start teaching in a situation like this?
Well, what I do is I'll teach things about how we create our emotions, right? And we create our emotions, the three insights, right? The three insights is usually always the first, is that the outside world doesn't cause our feelings. It may influence, but it is not a cause. The cause is what we keep telling ourselves in our head. Now, and I'll say, if you keep thinking about, I say, for example, I may say, okay, what you don't want to do is think about this 90% of your day. You know, have a time, a grief period in the evening or whatever, set aside, okay, I'll think about this, and then let it go. And don't permeate, or you couldn't go to your job or whatever else that you're trying to do. And when these thoughts come up, I say, wait, I'll talk about that later. So they're techniques and things you can do. But I forgot the gist of your question.
What's the first thing that you take them through and teach them when they're suffering like this?
It's the things as you go through our program, the insights. We create and maintain. How do we do it? How do we cause these emotions? And then how do we get rid of these emotions? So that's the process right there, very quickly. And the goal is, again, look, is true happiness and a mind that doesn't struggle, a mind at peace. Well, how do you have a mind at peace? Well, you got to teach how people struggle and how they disturb and upset themselves. So you begin, and an important factor here, and I would teach this up front with the people that come in with that situation you're talking about, but we've got to learn there's a difference between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is an experience, and you can have a pleasant experience that can flip immediately to an unpleasant experience rapidly. You could go from joy to anger and rage and fury in a millisecond, okay? Happiness is a mind that doesn't struggle, is peace of mind. A mind that doesn't struggle is peace, a peace of mind. It's regardless of the ups and downs of life, you have a balance. It's called equanimity. It's a balance. You don't react, and expect the world not to treat you special or different. You have that balance. That's true happiness. Most people think pleasure. By the way, I have nothing against pleasure, but we define pleasure as happiness, and we go after that pleasure. And when things are unpleasant, we want to kill ourselves or think that it's horrible and terrible. That's not. So you teach overall, you're going to teach that.
I think that our 4 Blocks program would help anybody in that situation, just watching our program and going over it. in any situation. I know when my father passed away, it's, the conditions are there. This can't be any different than the way it is.
And it doesn't mean that you don't feel grief and sadness. Yeah, the conditions are there, but I love this person and they won't be down for breakfast. So you have that grief and sadness, and you do miss them. I do mine. Mine's been dead. Both my parents have been dead now for many years. And I think about them every day. I still dream about them and talk to them. In dreams. So they'll keep coming back. But, yeah. So, I mean, the other things, then I begin slowly showing them that all people don't react the same way to the same situation. And my favorite one, for example, is a car that pulls in front of you. And we're not filming now, so I can't show you, but I'll take something like a pen or a pencil, and I'll say, what happens when I let go of this pencil?
It falls.
Falls, right. Well, does it fall 9 out of 10 times?
Falls every time.
If I drop this pen once in a billion years and it doesn't fall,
Something's
something
changed.
is going on. Something is different. Or I'm in a dream, because we can fly in dreams and float. Okay.
Yeah, sudden death is something that's very difficult to
Very
Just
deal
gotta
with.
finish the pen thing, because
Yeah.
what?
Well, okay. So if someone pulling in front of you on the interstate made you angry, which is almost 99% of the people say that pissed me off and that made me angry, well, I would ask them, I'd say, if we took 1,000 people and someone pulled in front of them on the interstate, do you think all 1,000 would be angry? And I just have them answer that, and some of them say, well, most of them would, and I say, well, that's my point. If it makes you angry, it's not most. If I have a hypothesis that all crows are black, I don't have to drag in every crow in the world. What do I have to do to disprove that belief? That one crow that isn't black. They'll say a white crow.
Basically, they're saying if the pen didn't fall one time, you would disprove gravity. So the fact that
That's
two
right.
out of 100 people could react differently means that the car did not cause you
even
to feel upset.
And one in a bill. If something pulling in front of you caused anger, then for the history of time, I mean, if an ox cart did it in the year 0, you would.
But a lot of people,
be upset.
it's easy for a lot of people to see why it's stupid to get mad about somebody pulling in front of you. But let's say you just got cheated on. Are you saying that being cheated on doesn't cause you to feel an emotion?
You usually have an emotion, but sometimes it's happiness.
'Cause it's
Because
hilarious.
There's an out now.
There's 60 million
Swingers.
and they not only do they
Well, that's not cheating, though,
get more,
because they have an agreement. I mean, it's polyamory, but it's not necessarily cheating.
but cheating, if you were totally rational and sane, which you're not, and I'm not either, but if you're totally rational and you'd say, you would, you could walk in, from a business trip and step over your wife having an affair on the carpet in the living room, and you would just,
It's not me.
you could go on and you would be
That's
fine.
what she said. It's not me.
That's right. And that's not me. And you could say, well, I don't have to take this personally. So we're not talking 100%. We're talking maximum of what you can do, not 100%, because we're fallible. We're human. So most people, and I don't like terms like cheating. Cheating has another whole factor, and everybody says cheating. You're cheating. You're cheating. Cheating means ownership, possessiveness. You don't own or possess anyone. And everybody, everyone, almost, not everyone, but let's say men and women have a 99.8% probability they would have an affair with somebody else. So let's say you have an agreement. So Beyonce or what's her name, the other dance, Beyonce or whoever. But anyway, Beyonce called you up and says, "Look, I can't be without you for."
Shakira called me. I'm cheating on anybody.
Shakira. So, but that's not cheating. See, cheating means you are a possession of mine, which is disturbance. Anytime you have something that's going to change and you're clinging to it, that's disturbance. And if you think that the vast majority of men will not do a Beyonce or who did you say? Shakira or whatever, of course we would. And if you say no, you're lying or you're trying to keep your congregation, one or the other. Okay. And the women, and let me tell you what, women, if it's, let's say, Liam Neeson or it's George Clooney.
Oh, totally.
Or they say, oh, no, I can't. I got to go home to Vinny.
Sure. Just right after you had your session with George.
Please. And what's this cheating? It's human nature. Cheating is possession and ownership. And by the way, the word cheating falls right under demands, must, and shoulds. The world and my woman should not cheat on me. Why? They cheat on everybody else.
Well, doesn't this go back to what we were talking about with the death of somebody, that you have the same thinking when somebody kills somebody?
They mustn't, shouldn't. We have the same belief that the woman, the little old lady looking for a credit card, that she shouldn't take so damn long in line at the. That's the same.
I guess I brought up cheating to say that some shoulds are bigger for people than other shoulds. Like cheating is a much bigger deal than being 15 seconds delayed.
The only rational should is it should be exactly the way it is. If your wife is giving someone a blowjob in Target, then she should be doing it, all right, because she's doing it.
Doesn't mean you agree with it, but she should be doing it because she is. The conditions are there. Just like this Alex did his shooting.
But you could wish that it would it have been any better if it was in Neiman Marcus parking lot? I mean, it upped the standard a little bit, right? Maybe the clerk was a little cleaner or something, had a nicer outfit or uniform on, but would it make any difference?
I think the more important point was that as soon as somebody has the power to quote unquote cheat on you, then you're already disturbed. Because
if you believe that cheating shouldn't exist, you're already disturbed. Cheating is you must be faithful. Now, let me ask you something. Why should people be faithful to you? That's an ego problem. I own them mind, body, soul, and genitals. Please put this on whether you think they're going to like it or not. Because this is the stuff, we're not talking about, cookies and milk all the time here. We're talking about human nature.
So are you saying that monogamy is like a made-up thing that doesn't work? Are you saying we should all be polyamorous?
No, I'm not saying should anything. I'm saying that monogamy is not a natural position for human beings. Monogamy is unnatural. Why? Because evolution is polygamous. If it was monogamy in all other species, which, by the way, no other species demands that you not cheat. They don't have that.
There's definitely monogamous.
If there's monogamy, no.
Yes, there are.
No, they used to think so. I encourage you to read a book. They used to think they were birds that were monogamous, geese and certain things. But they've done extensive studies of DNA now, and they find that birds, the ones we used to think were monogamous, were just like the others. I guess they were.
They hid and did it in the back of the iceberg,
back of the nest or something. I don't know, but the point is, and there's a great book on that, and it's called something about monogamy. But anyway, I can't think of the name of the book right now. But the point is, evolution is, if there was a bee only pollinating one flower or a butterfly pollinating one flower, there would be no more bees and flowers or butterflies. There's one thing with nature. So when I say monogamy is not natural, meaning let me put it this way, monogamy is an unnatural act. I'm not saying you can't choose, you and your mate.
Yeah, there's some practical reasons for it.
Yes, very practical. And I think it's a better way to go. That
Yeah.
you and your mate can say, hey, look, let's
avoid diseases. Let's avoid you getting pregnant from somebody else.
let's
A lot of good points.
let's you and I make this special between the two of us. You could make it to a restaurant. Let you and I never go to Burns with anyone else.
I'd like to get back on the track of how this got onto relationships. Is that it's not the events that take place. It appears that it's the events that take place that make us feel the way that we do.
But it's our
until you start realizing
it's our beliefs.
and seeing that it's not this way, you're never going to change.
Our beliefs is what does us in. And the major belief in these 7 irrational beliefs, we're resisting the moment as it exists, and it exists because evolution, nature, it exists exactly the way it is. It doesn't have an option. The conditions are there. And we have these thoughts that drive us away from seeing clearly. One is it shouldn't be the way it is.
And if it's not the way that I want it to be, it's terrible, it's horrible, and I can't
others,
stand it.
And others are going to suffer.
Which, by the way, we went about 4 irrational beliefs through to the 7.
Good.
So what's the 5th one?
The 5th irrational belief, and the one that it often does the most harm, it upset me. It's awful. I can't stand it. It shouldn't exist, or it should exist. See how crazy that is? It should. So I'm the creator of the universe. It either should exist or shouldn't because I don't like it. And then the 5th, always, 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 is what's the matter with me? Something's the matter with me. If this happened to me or didn't happen to me or something, I'm worthless, no good, or you mentioned...
Or I have some diagnosis, or there's something wrong with me.
Well, I'm PTSD. I got one guy that does that all the time. I said, stop saying that. You're PTSD. Say you're human. Now let's work on this, short attention span.
So
right?
this shooter, Alex, he had the terrorist in the mind just like somebody does with PTSD.
The terrorist is only in the mind. The chances of getting killed, we've talked about this before, by a terrorist is far greater to be struck by lightning and eaten by a shark or an alligator. So the terrorist we deal with all our lives is in the mind. And these are the 7 terrorists. I never thought about that before. The 7 terrorists, and the other one is self-rating. I mean, the 5th one that you mentioned, Stat, was the self-rating. I'm no good. I'm either great and wonderful, or I'm worthless and no good. If you rate yourself at all as good or bad, right or wrong, wonderful or worthless, you're going to suffer. All right? So the goal is to eliminate the concept of personal worth and self-rating. That's a tough one. That's why you got to go through the program, as you mentioned, Stat, many, 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 many times, over and over and over, because we got to create new cognitive, behavioral, emotional loops. You're on the old system. We're trying to get you off that.
Yeah, it's practice. You can't be happy unless you practice being happy and work with the tools.
That's why
if you don't sharpen your saw and you work with it every day, what takes place?
Yeah, my Zen teacher in Minneapolis has been doing Zen all of his life, most of his life, adult life anyway, and he meditates many times a day. Well, why? I mean, you're already there. You're way beyond...
Does Tom Brady still go to football practice?
Does he ever throw a pass? Yeah. Well, you look, Tom, you won 4 Super Bowls.
Band practiced.
Yeah.
Jack White still practices every day.
Yeah. I mean, the guitar, they say, oh, you got this natural ability. I remember them saying that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. My natural ability I got I remember Chet Atkins saying that. I practice 6 to 8 hours a day, every day of my life, including the holidays. That's how I got the natural power.
I'm going to go bury my
I guess
TV
it
in the
worked.
yard.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. So
6th, the rational belief.
the self-right. Now the sixth and seventh one, or I kind of just pulled it out because these two, those first five are really the core of disturbance. But these are so prevalent that I've made them 6 and 7. And the sixth irrational belief is absolutistic thinking. Always and never, good and bad, right and wrong, praise and blame, gain and loss. So we cling to these. I'm right. Well, there you go. I'm right because of my choice. My political party is right and yours is wrong. Well, we don't argue about that in this country, right? Or any country, right? What revolutions are about, right? So I'm right, you're wrong. All the religions and all this other kind of stuff are fighting. Pro-life, pro-choice, pro-gun. We can just go down the list. Me Too, Black Lives Matter. You can, and not that these aren't excellent causes, but you can carry a picket sign without
They're polarizing, is your point.
well, you can carry a picket sign and stand up for what you would prefer to be, if you believe in it. That's the culprit. But if you prefer something to be a certain way and you want to kind of maybe nudge the future a little bit, you can carry a picket sign. But when you take that picket sign and beat the other person over the head because they don't have the same beliefs, that's where the violence and all comes in all of our things. So these polarizing, and again, in the Buddhist philosophy, they talk about the middle way. And what's the middle way? We navigate the middle of the river. We don't get hung up on either bank of good and bad, right and wrong. The universe doesn't have good and bad. We have it in our head because we're demanding the universe evolve in the way it must in our own mind. And we make up things like cheating and all this other kind of stuff, which is not how
I think
evolution
that
is geared.
if Alex would have came in to see you and you gave him just that one insight, is how should these kids be treating you?
Right. How should they? Well, eventually we'd get to that. Right. They should be treating you because of their own upbringing, because of their choice. Let's say to be, heterosexual or something.
Well, you're assuming that people are just choosing that. I don't think anybody's being like, I feel like I want to be a gay transgender now. Like, I doubt that that's a choice that they want to make. They actually feel that way.
Well,
It's just a big assumption.
yeah, right. But that's again, they may, in fact, there may be a genetic predisposition there. That's not proven 100%.
Right.
But there may be a genetic predisposition. But the fact that people must leave me alone because I had a genetic predisposition is all made up. So, yeah, there may be a genetic predisposition, but I have known, I've had them in therapy, the people make those choices because they're easier choices for them to make. They're more accepting in that community, and they gravitate towards that because it's a more accepting type of community. But it could be anything. You could join the Ku Klux Klan because they're
Now, that's a choice.
accepting. Yeah, but they could be accepting, and they could be part of your gang and clan and so forth.
I'm not saying people don't ever choose that. I'm just saying, it's bold to assume that they just decided that one day, especially if they hated it and rejected themselves to the point of wanting to be suicidal. It doesn't sound like they wanted to be transgender.
No, it's just like him coming up with the idea that he's going to take revenge. It didn't happen in one day. That's thought patterns over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden one day they made that choice that I'm going to be transgender because I've had this thought patterns. I'm going to run with it. Just like he said, you know what? I'm going to take revenge today because I can't stand it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. But what isn't genetic and predisposed is violence on others. Now, we do, as human beings, have a high propensity for violence, but most of that is, and whatever the percentage is, because of our belief systems, and not because we're good or bad or the universe is good or bad. We could always blame God. Why did he make it this way? I mean, hell, you created a universe. Wouldn't it have been easy to not have bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
You couldn't pull that one off?
You know, the one I always want to have a long conversation with the creator of the universe about is, why didn't you make radishes 2,000 calories? You know, and chocolate ice
Why
cream.
can't I live off of donuts?
Yeah, exactly. Or why can't I? How about a southern fried chicken mashed potato smoothie? Is 10 calories, and then the kale smoothies are 2,000 calories.
Is that what you're having when you're out here, Doc? I've never heard of those yet.
Yeah,
You must be making that at home.
Well, right. And to get my wife.
Do you do it hot or cold?
My wife frowns at me, but but the point is, why the struggle? You love us. I mean, come on. All you have to do is wave your universal hand, and peace and harmony and love. And what's the matter with you?
Like, if things are going to exist, why is it not utopia?
That's right.
What's the point of having like a half shitty universe?
That's right. I mean, come on.
I struggle with this.
Why all that? I mean, and how much do I have to pray for it to just fall in our lap? The world is the way it is. It's not rooting for you, and it's not against you, no matter what you think. All right.
That's a long podcast, guys.
Yeah, we'll close this out with, if you're feeling these type of thoughts, watch the 4 Blocks program.
Right. Oh, the seventh, which we have one more. All right. And last, and one of my personal favorite, because of the craziness behind it, the idea of entitlement. I deserve better treatment. I deserve fidelity for 1,000 years because I deserve it. Or I don't deserve X.
Yeah.
Anyway.
A lack of entitlement is just as dangerous as too much.
Right.
I've certainly seen that a lot.
As
deserve
Statler
it.
was saying before, that all this stuff does work in the 4 Blocks program, but it does take practice.
Absolutely.
And so it's how fast it works for you is how fast you adapt and how fast you can learn from it. The more you put into it.
How many years did you have your old belief systems?
Yeah, I have a new client, by the way, is coming in today at 8:30. I can't believe I took
This
an
evening?
appointment. I know. Well,
Friday night.
Yeah, you're taking less time.
Oh, by the way, Lenee's in Columbia. She may be banging a Colombian, by the way. How do I know? So anyway.
I hope she is.
May you live every day of your life.
Why shouldn't she?
Exactly. She must be committed to me.
You can't say happiness without saying penis. So
Happiness.
that's
I
what
love it. That's great.
I tell that to every girl I meet.
You can't say happiness. Happiness. That's great, man.
Yeah.
That's a great line.